Hello to whoever's coming in right now. Ugh. Hello. Welcome back. I'm not tired. Like, I'm both tired and not tired. Maybe I'm just mentally tired. I can't believe it's almost the end of April already. Like, how do we get here? I hope you all had like a good week, 2 weeks since we were last back in class. My room right now is like so stuffy. So if you hear me like, I don't know, like get progressively stuffier and like start like coughing and stuff, not my fault. Our AC isn't working in our apartment, and it hasn't worked ever. So the HVAC guy is coming tomorrow to fix it, finally. Last night, I laid on the floor to feel some sense of like coldness because my bed is like raised up a little bit, and like all that hot air, like if I like sat up a little bit, like I could like feel the climate change. It was awful. And it got so hot so quickly. Like I went on a walk today and I was like, oh, it'll be fun. It's like 80 degrees out. Let's go. No. It was not a good idea. It was so hot. And like, ugh. And there's so many people out. No one was wearing a mask. It was awful. Now I'm just sweaty again. It's so hot in my room. And I'm like almost to the end of all my classes, so it's all getting busier, crazier. But anyways, we'll get started in like what, 3 minutes? Like always. 3-4 minutes. So like I said before in the last class, these next few classes will be like review based because we will kind of be ending, maybe possibly hiatus, something ending, I don't know. Soon, probably like what, the next class, so I thought it'd be a good time to go over everything again. Maybe use my better insight, maybe my better explaining skills, and just go over a few things, like the main key points from this class over again. And then, let me look at my calendar. Yeah, like the last class would be probably the 12th, depending. I might be busy, but because that's the week where like all my classes end, So it really depends, but that'll probably be the last class. And then maybe I'll pick it back up in June, depending on how busy I am, depending on if I have any other stuff to talk about. Because there's only so much you can talk about with writing. I'd love to maybe like change the course again into more like if people submitted stuff to me and then I could go over them. But then I know like a lot of people don't want that because that's scary. Putting, especially with like a live stream and stuff. But yeah. I guess I'll get started now. Not many people here yet, but at least from what I can see, because it takes a long time for my phone to update the viewers. But okay, so this is class 11, and we're gonna focus on review. This is the review to end all reviews, and this is part 1, because part 2 will be, the other half of like stuff that I talked about, at least the most important parts, because there's some things that I've gone over that aren't as important. So we're gonna go over like theme, premise, conflict, and character. Theme, premise, and character, theme, conflict, and character were the 3 things that I went over in my first class that I taught. And then I decided to add in premise in between all them, because I realized that, like, go into not in alphabetical order, but like in order of, what you do first in, thinking process and developing a story. So, theme. Theme is like, the main ideas of like theme is like, why are you writing the story? What makes this story important? What messages are you trying to tell with your story? It's not always like the first thing you think of when developing a story, but it should, always be in the back of your mind. So like, even though it might not be like, you're not going to think, some people do start out with like a theme and like, I want a story about heartbreak, or like heartbreak can be healing, something like that. Then many people start that way, but most of the time it doesn't. Usually you start with a premise and then you build off of like the premise and you go, well then what is the show, or what is this going to like the story going to be about? Mainly like what is the purpose of telling the story? So the common themes that we always see in like literature, movies, shows, whatever, is love, death, good versus evil, growing up, power and corruption, survival, courage, heroism, prejudice, individual versus society, and war. And of course, like there's like, you could probably think of like a billion shows that like are like stories that like talk about love or like talk about death. And a lot of times stories have multiple, so like you can have both love and survival, or power and corruption, good versus evil. Like those go great in hand. But like they don't even have to be as like strict as this. Like sometimes it can be more abstract. So it can be like not just like about survival. It can be like how survival changes a person. That could be a theme. And how to develop a theme. So you can seek universal themes, just like the list here. You can choose a theme that sticks with your audience. So you want something that's relatable. Like you don't want something that's so like out of range that like nobody really wants to like listen to it. Like so yeah. Start on a different story element. So, of course, usually this is like how it goes. You don't think of a theme first. Usually you like, oh, let me develop characters, or I have a premise in mind. What am I going to do beyond that? I mean, thinking of a theme first is always hard, and sometimes it can limit you, which, number 7, don't limit yourself. You can also create an outline that can help you, like, take things and make it, like, symbolize it, blah, blah, blah. Weave your theme throughout your narrative. You don't just want it to, like, be right there in the smack middle, or, like, right in, like, you kind of want it to, like, flow within it and not just be, like, the main thing. And you can, of course, I said before, include multiple themes. That's what makes it more rich, and your story's more thoughtful. Why even include a theme in your work? It brings meaning and richness to the story, can help develop the plot and the characters. So if you're having issues with, like, figuring out what your story, like, is about, and, like, how to, like, grow these characters, how to, like, keep the plot, like, going, think of a theme, think of something you can, like, have these characters wrestle with, like, ideas, or, like, what they can represent, even. Trying to think of an example that I have for my own thing. Like, I'm trying to think of one of my stories, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. Like, maybe in the journey for our lives, I was having trouble figuring out, like, what these characters were going to be, and how to, like, keep them continuously growing and developing, and also keeping the plot, like, interesting. And so I focused on the idea about, like, kind of, like, finding your own path, kind of, like, growing up and stuff. So all the characters kind of represent, like, different flaws of, like, that many young adults and, like, teens can have. And, like, once pushed into, like, the real world, then, like, they're gonna be forced to grow and find their own way. And thus, like, progressing the plot and, like, blah, blah, blah. You also, like, it also helps connect the audience to the story. And the more relatable and important the themes are to them, the more they're going to be engrossed in it. And it helps the story have a purpose or direction. Many stories won't have a theme, or, like, won't think about a theme as much. And, you want to have, like, some sort of purpose to what you're making, even if it's just to have fun, like, or to make it, like, really cool. Like, that's a purpose, at least. But your story should at least, like, feel like there's, like, a reason behind it. Sometimes a lot of, like, work that we, like, start off with, you don't, like, why are you making it, besides the fact that maybe it looks like it's something that, like, another artist you like does, or, like, whatever. So, like, find something that's, like, personal to you, and, like, a theme that's, like, resonates with you and you really want to show off and like, present in this art form, and then push it out to people. It makes people realize, like, that there's, like, a heart behind your work and all that. So, premise. We talked about this when? I think it was in, like, class 4. I don't even know. I remember I was trying to find all my, like, slides and, like, all the information on it in, like, my Google Docs. And it was, like, I had no idea what class I had done premise in. But I think it was 4. So, story is an overall idea of what is going to happen. More of who and what is involved without any steps or conclusion. It's the big conceptual idea. This is what I will be calling, the premise. Don't confuse with plot, because plot would be like, this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and, until the conclusion. A premise, like, I think of a premise like when you have, like, a good dream, and then you wake up and you're trying to remember it. That's what I think a premise is. It's just like, oh yeah, and then there were, like, vampires, and then, like, there was, like, a werewolf, and I just think it would be cool if there was, like, a romance. And like, and everyone's like, that doesn't make any sense. And they're like, it could. And that's when you start developing off of that. So like, Bill and Ted is about two carefree, kind of dumb teens who are trying to get a passing grade in school by time traveling. Like, that's like the core basic little crumbs of the story. And like, it doesn't tell you like who they meet. It doesn't tell them like why, like the stakes involved. It doesn't tell them like the exact conflict and obstacles. It just tells them, like, it tells us very little things about it. But it's still interesting enough. It's still like, it's like the stem of the idea, and then all the rest of the stuff are like the branches, you know. So here are other ones. Yeah. So like, a pair of twins have to live with their weird great uncle for the summer, and then like you'd be like, and then there's monsters. A family from the country moves to the city and have to adjust to the new lifestyle. Siblings find the most powerful person in the world after 100 years of him being missing. And then maybe you talk about like a little bit of the world, like, and everyone has some people can wield fire, you know, like, and like an orphan girl grows up to become the best chess player in the world. Seeing kids and goth kids fight over going to a new store. And this one was from like my old story or like script. And usually like we start story development with a premise. Like I said, like the dream idea. Like I have 2 ideas now, and like I barely have anything for it. Like I just have the premise I'm developing for it. So like I have like a fantasy sci-fi story with alien mages that focuses on like a stereotypical rival as the protag instead of the chosen one character being the lead. Very, very basic idea. You don't really know much about it. You don't know the characters' names. You don't know how it's going to end. You don't know, like, anything. But it's just, like, the very, like foundation of the story. Here's another one that I was thinking of, like, a preschool show that uses, like, ASMR and calming tone to help, like, kids settle down and also help them get through, like, fearful situations, like going to the dentist or, like, getting their hair cut or whatever. Very basic idea. Doesn't even like say who the characters are, that there are characters. It's just like you're just spouting ideas. I think these are more like rival book short owners are also anonymous pen pals. It's intriguing. You're like, what? Like they're rivals, but then they're like friends or like they like each other. A son calls a radiotherapist to help his father find, like, the one. Like, it takes something that we all know, like, the radiotherapist at, like, close to, like, 9 p.m., when you're, like, driving really late. And, like, this is, like, something we all know about, and then it takes something that, like, maybe we'd, like, something that we'd hear and just, like, maybe witness a little bit, but never be like a part of and seeing the behind the scenes of. And then like a rat wants to become a chef. Simple, basic, small little crumbs. An old man moves his house with balloons to a new country. Very basic crumbs. A fish loses his son and travels across the ocean to find him. Closet doors can lead to the monster world. Very small little ideas, but they're still exciting enough that like if you told someone, they would be like, oh, I'm intrigued. Oh, I like this. So like a premise doesn't have to be like a log line. I think I've said like in the last class that I talked about it that like it is like a log line, but I think it doesn't have to be. It's just spouting out an idea in its most basic form until you get to the more structural, strict idea of a logline, which would be the representation of your whole story, like premise, like the actual idea. Yeah. And every plot ever written basically follows the same structure and has similar plot beats. But what makes them interesting is their premise. So, like, and the premise is just, like, you know, You talk about like the main characters a little bit, or like just like the goals you kind of want in your like what you want out of it. Like kind of maybe the theme sometimes. Maybe you talk about themes or like the main conflict, or like what kind of world it's set in. Like what makes it different from something else. What makes it different from this thing that we've heard about. Like um, so on, so on. And how can we make it more interesting so you can learn from the world around you? So just take in everything. Um, like the show Glow. I had to watch it for the TV pilot class I'm taking, and so we watched the pilot, and then I kept watching after the pilot. So I mean, it's very like it's a kind of like niche idea, but that's what makes it interesting. Like an '80s like wrestling show, like women's wrestling show, and like the behind the scenes of that. Like that's interesting. Like that's something we don't see and really talk about much. Like think of all like the crime shows you've seen; they're almost exactly the same. How do they keep getting greenlit? I don't know. People just like to see the same thing over and over again. But the main big things in television and film, the things that get people's attention most of the time are new ideas, something that's different but still relatable in a sense, something that's like, kind of exists, but you never would explore on your own without the story. So like, um, what's it called? The chess show with the girl. um, no, the Queen's Gambit. That like that show, like I'm never into chess. I barely can play it. But like that show, like shows you like gives you a gateway into that kind of world of chess, and then like suddenly afterwards, I wanted to become a good chess champion. And now I know a little bit about like the world of like chess. Like I don't know, like I know who the grandmaster. What is it? Like the grandmaster. Yeah, that's like like the big champion. I forgot his name. I think his name is like Magnus something. Like now I know that because of the show. So find something that's like the best shows are always a niche one, or the ones that really take a concept. Like think of zombies have always been a concept, but then The Walking Dead revitalized that concept, or like Game of Thrones. Fantasy has always been a thing, and that genre has always been a thing, but that show really took it. And of course, like the books, but like the show really like revitalized that idea of fantasy, and people were captivated by it. Trying to think of anything else. Yeah. I don't know. Amphibia frogs. Everyone loves frogs. And they took that and went, okay, we're gonna do a whole show with frogs. And also, you want to be specific about like what you're talking about. You don't want it to just be like, oh, there's a cool world that I have, and there's powerful people in it. Vagueness isn't gonna get anyone interested in it. And like the more specific and the more niche you kind of get, not that you have to make, like you have to find the most niche little like community, like make a show about pumpkin chunkin and like about like the weird world around like that whole competition, not like something like that. But take something that's just seems interesting, that hasn't been really told before, and then maybe you'll captivate at least some sort of audience. And you want to juxtapose, so any sense of like taking two conflicting ideas can really like be interesting. I mean, it always is. I'm trying to think of an actual like show that really does that well. Like, trying to think. Like Big City Greens. I mean, that's like you take. these country bumpkins, put them in the city. Let's see how that works. Let's see what funny shenanigans they get in. Or you can take juxtaposing characters and make them the interesting thing. And like that could be like the two opposing forces or like different ideas. Yeah, Arlo. I need to see that movie. Or like, what's the new movie that's coming out? It's coming out Friday. The Mitchells and the Machines, like this horrible, not like horrible. I don't think they're probably that bad, but like this dysfunctional family. Now you have to put them in like a robot apocalypse and like see if they can get through it and be functional enough to get through it. That's interesting. So once you get into more plot structure and elements in the story, it's important no matter how outlandish or niche your premise is to be relatable. It's important to emotionally connect your audience to your story, even if it's something they know nothing about. They should still relate to the characters, their struggles, their emotions, the setting, something, anything. I haven't seen Mitchell's and the Machine. Obviously, it's not out. But from what I've seen, like, they really grounded these characters in, like, very relatable, like, archetypes of, like, the mom, the dad, the brother, the weird sister. Like, especially with, like, the younger brother and his, like, love of, like, dinosaurs. This is something we can relate to. We as, like, when we were growing up, were either, like, obsessed with dinosaurs, or we had a brother or a cousin or a friend that loved dinosaurs. Like, there's always that one kid in class that loved dinosaurs. And that's something we can, like, grasp onto and be like, oh, yeah, that's, like, my brother. Or that's, like, me. And, like, the little things, like, about, like, a premise and, like, about, like, like, think of, like, Bill and Ted. Where is it? Like, these are just teens trying to get a passing grade. And that's, like, something that we, everyone's gone to school. We all want to pass. And so, this is a relatable goal and like, then a relatable premise. But then you go and be like, oh, time traveling, what the heck? Like, everyone's willing to go to, like, big lengths to get, like, a passing grade or, like, and so, like, this is something we can relate to, and that, their stakes feel real to us. Yeah, so, like, I hate sports, but if I watch a movie or show on sports, and the characters and the conflict have me, like, invested enough, like, I'm gonna watch it. Like, I'm gonna watch the whole thing. Yeah. Now, we are going into conflict. I'm going through this faster than I thought I would. Maybe I'll, like, slow down. Okay. Every story has conflict, obviously. You can't write a story without it. I feel like there's, like, a part of me when, like, I was younger and, like, some teacher, like, is like, yeah, every story has conflict. And then you're like, I think I can not write a story without conflict. And you can't. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, a story that doesn't. Maybe, like, a stream of consciousness, like, journal that's some, like, French philosopher wrote. I don't know. But conflict is what makes everything interesting. Like, think of, like, the Socratic method. Like, I forget what book I read that had that. It was a philosophy book. But the whole book, like, the whole, like, philosophy, like, little tiny book is, like, written in, like, an argument. Like, these two people are, like, arguing. I totally forget what it is. I haven't read it in, like, years. But, like, because they're, like, arguing and they're, like, bouncing off each other, there's a conflict. And that's more interesting. Even if they're just talking about, I don't know, big mumbo jumbo stuff like that, you know, the Greeks had time to think about. And it's like the only reason like we write stories is because there's a conflict, there's something these characters need to get like over, and it's the only reason why we're focusing on these characters in this particular moment. Like there's no other, like you could think of like the moment before, why not just focus on another moment instead of the one, I don't know. Okay, now I've already lost my train of thought. I was so tired. But yeah, it's the reason why we're writing conflict. So you can create multiple problems for your characters to overcome. Glow has like, as I talked about on Netflix, has like an overall conflict of the wrestling show needing to succeed, but the main character has the main conflict of finding and keeping an acting job, and then also overcoming the issue that she had sex with her best friend's husband, which then evolves into the other conflict of how she's going to work with her ex-best friend when her ex-best friend hates her. So, like, the conflicts keep layering on each other, and they don't end, because that's, you know, you want the plot to keep developing. You don't just, like, the more, not that you need, like, 50 bajillion conflicts, but, the more that you have, the more interesting it is, and there are different ways you can do conflict. Where is it? Like a sitcom show, like Big City Greens has like a different way of approaching a conflict versus like a more action or heavy, like drama heavy show. Like some shows have like a conflict per episode. Some have like an overarching conflict and then have smaller conflicts that eventually lead them to facing the bigger one. Films usually have one overarching conflict with like obstacles along the way. So there's not one way of just writing a conflict. Like they need to just face the bad guy head on. Like Amphibia, which I've been watching. As you can tell, I'm going to keep like referencing it. Like they have like the main problem is that Anne needs to get back home. But throughout the whole, like, at least season 1, we don't see, like, that being, like, it's in the back of our minds, like, oh, Anne needs to go back home. But then they face so many other conflicts and issues along the way in each episode. So you can, like, layer your conflicts. So usually, like, when you think about conflicts, usually the statement, this happens, and then this happens, but then this happens. So usually it's, like, character wants this, but then something is keeping them from doing that. I haven't seen the latest episode. I'm just watching season 1 because I don't have cable, so I'm just watching it on Disney Plus. So nobody spoil me on this upcoming episode. So like my cat wants to eat now, but she's on a feeding schedule. Like, that's what they want. That's their goal. But this is the thing keeping them from having their goal. And that's usually how conflicts go. Like, a child hates needles, but they need to get their vaccines. Or, you know, if you're an adult, you know. The girl gets lead in school play, but she has terrible stage fright. You know, it's just these two conflicting things. They don't mesh well, you know. And there are like common conflicts that like in a lot of stories, like character versus self, which is like that, like the internal conflict of like, you know, this would be like the internal conflict of coming over like stage fright. Character versus character, which is like, you know, protagonist versus antagonist. character versus society. You know, trying to think. Like, Anne is, like, kind of hated by, like, the town in the beginning because she's, like, new, like, she's the beast or whatever. That's something they need to overcome. That's a conflict. Character versus supernatural. You know, or werewolf. I don't know. Bella and the Valtori. I don't know. Character versus technology. You know, Mitchells versus the machines. Character versus nature. Trying to think of a nature one. Like, I don't know. The I don't know, maybe like Twister. You know, like the movie about like the Twister, the tornado. Yeah, I mean that's nature. That's natural. Castaway. Yeah, I was trying to figure out the name of Castaway. You know, any element where they're like trying to fight, like survive against natural things that aren't like human. So like animals, plants, weather, natural disasters, those kind of things. And you can layer these. And of course, like think of like in Glow, they're gonna like layer these kind of things here. Like the main character has to overcome them, like their own either like self-doubt or like, you know, what they thought they needed to become. And then like character versus character, it's like her and her ex best friend. And like character versus society, there's a lot of like misogyny. I don't know, it's the 80s. And they're women wrestlers, so you know, so they have to overcome that kind of stuff. And ways to create conflict. So determine what kind of conflict your story needs. So like in a story about, you know, that's like fantasy based, like D&D kind of fantasy, you're not going to do like technology. Like your characters aren't going to be fighting robots unless, you know, you want to. And like maybe like you want to do something that's more like bigger society, like they're going against the government or something like that. That's going to be more appropriate. Or like maybe you feel like it'd be better if you had it like there was an evil villain that they need to get over or like triumph over. Or maybe this is more of like an introspective fantasy where like they don't know their like powers and something's keeping them from like their like emotional state. I don't know, something like that. Decide on like what your character wants, then put an obstacle in front of it. You know, it's this happens, but then this happens. Create characters with opposing values. This is super important because like it shows not only like that your characters are like kind of well-rounded, they have opinions and ideas, but also like it can create future growth. Like one of the characters could like, I don't know, hate pickles, and then the other one's like, but you like pickles are like so good, blah blah, and then at the end of the episode a pickle saves them, and then they're like, wow, I guess I should have liked pickles all along or something. I don't know. But it shows growth. Create a powerful antagonist. So make sure that like there's stakes involved, and that like your antagonists, they shouldn't be weak. I don't know if any of you watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. I kept up with it just because I felt like I should. And like it wasn't like a bad show. Like there were parts of it that I really liked. But the antagonists were, like, the weakest part of the show, in my opinion. Because, like, they didn't feel, real enough. I don't know. Like, it felt, not that they weren't real. It just felt, I don't know. Like, their whole thing was that they wanted to unite the world again. And then, like, I don't know, like, I kind of agreed with them, not with, like, their tactics, but, like, I felt like they were forcing the whole, like, oh, she's a killer, oh, she you know, is super evil now because she kills people, but she has a good message. Like, they felt like it didn't feel like a antagonist that felt worth Sam becoming Captain America or like whatever. Although the last episode does like kind of help fix it a little bit. I don't know. It's just like whenever they were going after them, I was like, why are they going after them? Like, I know that they're like doing stuff that are like kind of bad, but like, and that they have like the super serum. That's like the only thing that makes them worth it. But then they never really like feel like they're strong enough. I don't know. Like, that's like an issue for me. But then on the flip side, oops, again, I still have not deleted Flash player. You can now see yet again. But anyways, on the flip side, a better like antagonist is an Invincible. Like, I don't know. Has anyone seen it? Is anyone like? I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's kind of in the first episode. It's kind of a part of like the premise. I feel like. Anyways, spoiler alert. In the first episode, it's kind of revealed that Mark's dad is like the main villain. Like, he's kind of like bad. And so I won't tell you how. I won't tell you whatever. But that feels like it's like there's stakes involved with it, and it's like kind of it's more interesting. Like, that's Mark's dad. Mark is the main character, and you wonder why he's bad, and he's also the most powerful like being on the planet, and it's more interesting. I don't know. You feel like there's like, in the end, like, I don't know what's gonna happen in the finale. It's not out yet, but you feel like there's like stakes involved. Like, you feel like this is like the ultimate thing that's really gonna make Mark grow or not grow. You know, like this could kill him. I don't know. Anyways, it helps sustain conflict momentum into the middle of the story. Yeah, so you don't want to like have your inciting incident and then like things fall down from there. So like your inciting incident, like Anne, not like Anne being in Amphibia, or like yeah, that's basically what the show is like. Yeah, if Superman had a kid, he also had powers, but Superman is like, yeah, awful. Basically, that's the show. But the son's perfect and amazing. It's a good show. I think everyone should watch it. It's so good. There's like so many layers to the show. It's a little gross. Some of like, I feel like they like really push like the gore stuff, which I'm like, ugh. And it's not like terribly bad, but then because it's animation, you can see I'm not updating anything. All my fatal flaws are showing. Anyways, yeah, good show. Anyways, as I was saying, so like with Amphibia, the main thing is that Anne is in this new world and wants to get back home. And that's like the inciting incident, that she is brought into this home, nobody accepts her, or brought into this new world, nobody accepts her. And that's the inciting incident. And then the problem afterwards is like what are you going to go from there? How are we going to sustain this? So they're like, because they have to wait until the season's over or whatever to get across the mountain or whatever to like over the valley or whatever. Of course, like they have to have that gap, you know, what's going to be in there. So they like create kind of like background villains, or they create mini conflicts with every episode, and like we see like, and there's different kinds of like conflicts. Like I think like every episode almost touches most of this, like usually there's a character that has to go through like their own like biases or like what they believe. Like Anne has an issue on like within like the second or so episode where it's like she doesn't really know what a friend is supposed to be like, and that causes issues with her. And oh my god, I forgot the little tiny frog's name. But you know, it causes issues with her new friendship. And then like, you know, you have character versus character, like usually there's stuff with that. There's like character versus society, where like there's a whole episode where Anne's like, nobody likes me and it's really frustrating. Everyone calls me ugly. You know, Supernatural. Are there any like? I mean, are there any Supernatural? I haven't seen any yet. I don't know. Technology. You know, the phone dies one episode. Nature. I don't know. There's big giant bugs. That's pretty crazy. You know, that's always nature. Yeah. What else? You can strengthen conflict with like a subplot. Think of like Sasha. You know, she has her own little subplot that like in season 1 where it's just like, you know, developing in the background. You see like a few episodes in the beginning, you wonder what's happening, and then like you know that there's like something like there's something not good, you know, there's a like this big toad guy wants to like control everything, I guess. I haven't gotten I'm not there yet. And then like raise the stakes. You want it to feel like these characters are gonna lose something if they don't win, or if they don't get what they want. It might be smaller things like they might lose a friendship, or bigger things like they might die, you know. And think of your conflict like visually, especially since, you know, animation is a visual medium. You don't want to think in just like in terms of conflict and just dialogue, which I think a lot of people like. It's hard, like for writers starting out, a lot of people like to start conflict out with just dialogue, like it's just arguing, and maybe there are better ways to do it, you know. It can be more visual. It can think of like separation of places, and like think of, I'm trying to think of, like I just watched this episode. It's the one where in Amphibia where they watch the movie and the whole town like cuts in half. Like visually you see it, like the conflict happening. It's more than just like them talking. There's also the physical place is separated. Yeah. And conflict, as I talked about, can be done in different ways. You can do the monster a week kind of thing. You can do just like a problem a week, but you're like sitcoms. Like you're gonna have a situation, and your characters are gonna like make jokes. You know, it's a situational comedy. Like a situation a week. They get into something funny shenanigans, and then they try to fix it or something. Like Amphibia has like every episode is like an issue, but you know the broader issue. With Glow, it more like builds on each other, like the conflict builds. It's more because of like the narrative it is. There's an overarching one, and then maybe there's like obstacles along the way in each episode, but mainly the overarching one is what is brought in, and then like there's like the subplot conflicts and stuff. And like you don't have to like even like explain the conflict as much like outright. I'm thinking of like, have not watched The Sopranos, but in my pilot class we talked about it and we used it as an example. So I'm going to use it as an example, we watched the pilot, and the main guy, I think his name is Joey. I don't know. Mr. Soprano, he has these ducks that he really likes, that he like feeds in his pool. And he seems kind of obsessed over it. But they kind of represent his family and like his like how he wants to protect them, blah blah blah. And then we learn later in the episode that like his mom and like uncle want to like get rid of him, or like don't like how he's leading the gang or whatever. And so they're like, we need to get rid of him or whatever. And he doesn't know that, obviously. We do. So then at the end of the episode, we don't see, in the pool, we don't see the ducks anymore, which show visually that this is a conflict that he has to make, like, chooses like the safety of his family, or you know, his legacy and like his job or whatever. Yeah. Films, TV, gonna approach it differently, obviously. Of course, depending on like if it's a standalone film, which nothing is anymore, and versus like you know, like a series of movies that like are purposefully in a series, like you know, Harry Potter would be an example, unfortunately. Like obviously every film builds on each other. There's an overall conflict in each film, but then at the end there's, you know, we all know like what the big villain is, and what they need to face. So I did not make a transition card. Oh well. So we're gonna go into characters now. And so the big ideas with like how to making like a good character would be motivation, like focusing on developing their motivation, developing their personality and flaws, and then giving them morals, beliefs, and interests, and then like having a backstory for them. And then I didn't talk about this in the first class, but I think understanding their growth and development is also very important. So with motivation, character motivation is the reason behind a character's behaviors and actions in a given scene or throughout a story. Motivations are intrinsic needs. They might be external needs and related to survival, but they might also be psychological or existential needs such as love or professional achievement. So this ties into conflict. Usually the character's motivated for something. In Glow, the main character wants to have an acting career and really needs a job. Like, they need it to survive. That's their motivation. And they have the motivation of wanting a job. And there's, like, many different reasons behind it. Or, like, that's their goal. And then they have all these, like, things backing it, pushing her to get this job. Like, they need money to survive, like, or they can't like eat. But then they also just want to feel like they have a purpose as well. It also makes it easier to get inside a character's head. So like think of acting. Usually a lot of actors, even if like it isn't like presented in the text, or they're not the writer, so like they always try to find a motivation behind why they're saying something, why the character's this way. Every character, even like the smallest or worst characters, needs some type of motivation. Like, even like the character that's just like the cashier, why is the cashier upset that day? Like, I don't know, like what's the motivation behind them getting up and going to work and being upset, you know? And so here's a little motivation, little like needs chart. You have like the psychological or physiological, sorry. So this is just like what you need. Like, you need to be able to breathe, and food and water. But you also, like, need safety, and then, like, love and belonging, and then, like, esteem, and then self-actualization. And a character can have, like, just, like, one part, like, that's what their main thing is, or they can have a lot of parts. Like, think of the movie where, I think is it Gravity? No. Yeah. The one where, like, Sandra Bullock is just, like, stuck in space. Um, like, the main, like, thing, like, her, like, motivation to survive, like, the reason she wants to get out is because she is losing oxygen, you know, she needs to breathe, she has no food, water. But then she starts to feel lonely, like she needs a friendship, like she wants family and people there. And maybe there's like, I haven't seen the movie in like years, but like, there may be other parts to it and all that. So a goal is something that a character wants to achieve. It is like a conscious objective, maybe an object, maybe a person, maybe just like a thing that they want. So like getting rich, winning the World Cup, um, dating their crush, I don't know, trying to get back home, something like that. But the motivation behind it, is why the person has that goal. So like it could be the fear of being financially insecure or needing to prove themselves as someone exceptional, like making someone proud, and make the goal very tangible. So like you don't want it to be too abstract or people aren't going to like feel related, like they can't relate to it. So like getting a job is super relatable. Everyone tries to get a job, blah blah blah. You know, joining the circus is something that people can like understand, and like grasp onto, and like the motivation can be a bit more abstract, even like, even maybe we don't understand it at first as an audience. So like maybe they need to join the circus to protect their family, but we don't know why. Think of like Mark Stat being like evil. Why? We don't know why yet. But obviously we know there's a motivation. He says it's to protect their family, to protect the earth, but why? Like, we don't know yet. So motivations don't need to make sense or be rational. Like, think villains. Like, maybe they want to like put poison in the water, because someone killed their wife. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, 2 + 2 equals like 5. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But to the character, that makes sense. Like, that's how they can get revenge. And characters can have conflicting motivations. Like, my example here, well, not like I'm saying you can't be a mom and have a successful career, but it is like trying to be like there for one thing and also there for another thing. Think of like High School Musical. He wants to be a basketball player and in the musical, and he doesn't want to disappoint, you know, the people in both sides and both clubs. So those are two conflicting motivations. Motivations don't need to be explicitly stated to the audience. Like, you don't need the character to be like, oh, I'm doing this because my mom is dying, like, or I'm doing this because I'm very scared of being poor. Sometimes it's just very obvious, and also you can do it through more like subtext or through like actions and like just like moments instead of just like outright saying it. Like in Glow, they don't say exactly that she's like broke or like she's trying to get a job because she needs money. But we know that she needs money because like her fridge is like empty. She gets robbed. Like, she doesn't have enough money. Like, she was gonna save like a taco for like both lunch and dinner and then like breakfast for the next day. Like, those are things that we can see, but aren't explicitly said. So character backstory, it doesn't need to be spelled out as well, especially right away. I think a lot of people are like, oh, like, you think it's like, oh, my name is blah, 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 and my blah, blah, blah is blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's better to rearrange a character story and think of, like, not just being like, oh, here's what happened in their past, and then, like, go, like, fast forward into the future. Sometimes it's better to leave it as a mystery, or kind of throw it in like dialogue or like flashbacks, like, or whatever, like throughout the story, and like leave like a little trail, a little sprinkle of it, and only add in and acknowledge stuff that will directly affect the story, in like the presence of like of the story. If like you don't need to like show everything about it, even if you know it, like as a writer and the author, if it's not important to know, don't exactly add it in. Although you can, I don't know. Just do it to like whatever you feel like is best. So when thinking about backstory, when I consider like family, like how they were brought up and raised, like culture, any trauma or past conflicts, like think of Anne and Amphibia, like Anne, like I'm trying to think, like in the second episode, she's trying to become like friends, but she obviously doesn't understand friendship from her past friendships, and like through the dialogue she's like, oh well, this isn't what friends do, because they do this and this and make you do this. And so you get their past conflicts through that dialogue and see like what motivates her, why she's this way, blah blah blah. So personalities and flaws, this is like the main part of your character. Usually this is what you think of first, and I think it's also the hardest part, because obviously the characters are going to be the first thing you kind of, like, the audience wants to understand and, like, usually like first. So, like, when you're thinking about it, like, how does their personality affect the story? Why are they the way they are? How do they interact with others? How do they deal with conflict? Was the flaw important or interesting? Or did you feel like you need to flesh out your character? Sometimes we add things to a character, and I think it's just like, because there's a lot of artists, not calling anyone out, because, you know, I've done it too, where you just like create characters because you like character designing, and then you add like a bunch of stuff onto it, and then you don't really know how that's going to work for a story, and like develop it further into like a real like breathing character. And the thing is, like, you'll never know every part about your character, and that's fine. Like, you don't know every part of a person, and like an audience could never observe like ever take in that much information about like a character. So don't make it too complicated. So like, how would you describe your character in simple, basic like terms? And what does your character represent, like in terms of themes, like especially for like subplot characters, even like or like sub characters, like do they represent to the main character like a mother figure, a father figure, a lost loved one, things like that. And what are their relationships and importance to the main character? And be specific without creating a haze of confusion. Sometimes adding too much stuff, like I said before, can be really confusing. And especially, like, while you want to have conflicting parts, because that makes it, like, kind of, like, more interesting, too much can be, like, what is this character? What are they about? Usually you can do this by, like, having a main personality trait. Like, if your character is, like, I don't know, they're easily irritable, then that would be their main thing. But you know, as a writer, there's more to them. Sometimes just understanding them as that can be, like, an easy way to start, and making sure that their goals and their personality can sometimes, like, translate well to each other. But, like, sometimes trying to make your character too much of something and of everything can be hard. Especially, like, I feel like this happens with a lot of, like, main characters, that they are everything at once. And that can be hard to do. And I think we want to, as, like, creative people, keep, like, adding on things and reworking and stuff. which is important. You need to be able to also understand that sometimes one version of your character isn't working, and sometimes you have to change it. Or maybe even change who your main character is, and see how that works out. And if it's more interesting. I'm trying to think of anything else. Because I remember I had like an idea, like a little like thought bubble in my head I thought about earlier today, and I forgot it. But yeah. And like, make sure, like, I think a lot of people put relationships on like a back burner. You need to like understand how your characters interact with other people, and who are their most important people. Why are they like, or like, who do they hate? Who do they not hate? And why? Because that makes your character feel way more grounded. Because the way we kind of know ourselves is by interacting with other people. And even if it's just like how they talk to the bus driver, or how they like, do they like waving to their neighbor or not? Like, that's something, that's anything. And make your character believe in something. So make your characters have opinions on stuff. Anything. Like, do they listen to music? Like, do they hate criminals? Are they scared of cats? Do they believe in God? Like, these are important things. They make them feel like they're real and breathing and have thoughts. And these, like, questions don't need to be answered before you're writing your story. But, like, if you have a major issue proposed in your story, how are they going to react to it? And, like, versus other characters, how is that going to affect their relationships? How are they going to, like, talk about it? Stuff like that. And this can lead to future conflicts. And maybe this can, like, cause them to question their beliefs and then change their ways. And this goes into developing them. I think also, as artists and as, like, creative people, we kind of, like, get stuck in one idea of, like, how a character can be, and, like, and don't think about how they can grow, like, the next step for them, which I think, like, the development is the most interesting thing. It's why people keep watching. It's the reason why, like, Breaking Bad was so big, was, like, you wanted to see how this character evolves over time. And I think a lot of, like, when you're in development for, like, a story, you think of, like, the present version instead of what they will be in long term. Like, because they're irritable, how are the things in the story going to affect them in a way that's going to make them either not or less. Yeah. So, like, all these things should, like, eventually lead up to, like, development, or even, like, anti-development, you know, like, maybe, like, they're regressing in a way. But yeah, like, their personality, who this character is going to be different from, like, the beginning to the end. And you should, like, know how and why. And, like, sprinkle it in the beginning of your story. And, like, just, like, be like, oh, this is how they are. And show, like, bits and pieces of, like, how they can, like sprinkle in, like, show a sneak peek of, like, maybe this is how they can change and blah, blah, blah. I think that's it. Is that where I ended it? I guess so. Yeah. But yeah. Very passionate about characters. Cause, like, I do feel like when we're writing stories, we aren't thinking about how these characters can grow. Cause that's the whole point of the story. Like, development and these characters developing. And, like, how they will change near the end. Because, like, I don't know. Because, like, we're going to get back into structure in the next class, but, like, think of, like, the hero's journey. And, like, Aang wasn't the same person, like, in the first episode. Like, he's funny-go-lucky. Like, you know, like, he wants to have fun all the time. He's not serious. And then by the end, you see him make mature choices and go through struggles, and you see him really grow. That's interesting, you know? We see, like, Sokka go from, like, this goofier, protective brother who hates women. And then at the end of the episode, like, he's like this, he's become very mature, blah, 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 likes women. I don't know, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's really all I have. I don't really have any, like, stuff to go over or, like, any resources, because I focused on redoing my notes and stuff. Trying to think of anything else I've talked about. Or if I missed anything. If anyone has any questions, ask them now. I heard this advice from Mike Rianda, from his class. And it was, like, it's helpful and also character design. Like, you want to make this character stand out in some way. To the first character page. Is it the, wait. Okay, wait. This one? Or motivation? This one? Okay. Yep. But yeah, next week we'll go over, like, structure, dialogue, maybe outlining, stuff like that. How to make the public be challenged by the story. I'm guessing you mean, like, how to make them, like, kind of think about it harder. I think it's just proposing, difficult subjects. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I mean, the more controversial the subject, the more you're gonna challenge your, audience a little bit to think. Like, you want to also, like, add in those, like, conflicting, opposing forces, present both arguments in ways that are both rational, and then let them think of, like, those, like think of them both equally. Trying to think of any stories that kind of do that. Like, I guess, trying to think. Trying to think. I haven't, maybe, I'm trying to think, like, the American Crime Story, but the one that was about, like, OJ. That one, I mean, like, everyone already had that, like, opinion of, like, or argument, like, about, like, did he do it or not, still to this day. And so presenting that kind of argument within a whole story, presenting both sides, and both of their arguments, and then letting the audience decide on themselves. So, like, you don't want to lean to a side, which many people might not like, depending on the subject. I'm not sure exactly what your thing would be about. More of, like, a kid context, or, like, a cartoon kind of context. I'm trying to think of something, like, I mean, Legend of Korra, I guess. I'm always thinking of that show. But, like, the ideas with, like, Amon and, like, and a lot of the villains in that show, they present, like, these arguments, and then, of course, but the show has, like, a narrative that leans towards one side's good, one side's bad. Just think of more, like, gray area terms, I guess. That's what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier tried to do. But I feel like they didn't set it up, and, like, it fell flat at the end. They wanted to, like, pull a Black Panther and do, like, this, the villain has a good kind of like idea, like they have a good argument, they have like their motivations are good, but then, you know, they're doing it in the wrong way. That kind of thing. Trying to think of any other movies I know that kind of set up that kind of thing. Sometimes like leaving like a vague ending, not letting you like have like a set resolution can also cause you to like challenge an audience and like have them argue about what could happen, and what should happen, and that can challenge them in a way. But yeah, just having something kind of controversial. That's kind of the only thing that I can say can challenge an audience. And also like not setting up everything within dialogue so easily. Let them kind of find out things on their own through like either visual cues or like subtext or, you know, something like that. Like audience love, like people love to find like and figure things out. Like we love to watch Criminal Minds, and so every episode we're like, oh, we want to like, oh, he definitely did it, blah blah blah. This one did it, and we do it because like, I mean, it's pretty like straightforward with like Criminal Minds, anyways. But like, we love feeling like we're smart, you know? If there's any other questions, any other ones? Ugh. I have like how many weeks until I'm done school? Forever? Maybe forever. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to grad school. Who knows? Maybe if it's cheap. My last day of school is the 18th. And then I graduate on the 28th. So I have like almost a month. A little bit less. Kind of crazy. And of course, I'm like trying to find an internship still. It's always a struggle. And like I'm a part of a Discord where there's like they post internships that they see on like job boards, and everyone signed up for the same one, and then everyone talks about if they got it, like if they're no longer in consideration or not, and you're just like sitting there like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to me? When am I gonna get the email? And you, it's I hate it. Awful. I hate it. But yeah, if there's no other questions, I guess I'll end it here. Thank you guys for coming. I always enjoy the comments. You know, I really hope I get one soon too. But I mean, I'll have a job this summer no matter what. It's just, you know, I'd rather have an internship that can help me, you know, grow, opportunities, blah blah blah, and have a better paycheck. But yeah, we'll have next class. I think it's the 12th of May. Yeah, pretty sure. And that'll be probably maybe the last class. Maybe I could do the 26th. I mean, I'm still gonna be up here. I mean, I'll probably be packing though, so it depends. Maybe we'll see. But then after, like, definitely, like, I won't have any classes until like June. But yes, thank you guys for coming. I guess I'll end it here. And I'll post this soon on YouTube and stuff. But yeah, thank you for coming. Goodbye.